settling into a easy, free and loose posture. Like yesterday, making sure that you are resting in the spot that allows your spine to be free, your belly and your chest to release, the crown of your head to float up. Your legs are loose and easy. More and more relaxed. And as usual, the very first thing that we do is that we don't. We stop doing whatever we were doing before. So if you have that feeling of momentum carrying you along, softening that space between your eyebrows, around your eyes, behind your eyes, if you can feel it. Relaxing your jaw, the muscles in your cheeks, your lips, your tongue. Softening your throat, the sides of your neck and shoulders, the back of your neck. Along with that decompression comes this release and lengthening of your spine. As you decompress your neck and you feel your head as though it's releasing upward. Make certain that the tops of the shoulders release away from your ears. Your elbows hanging down. Your forearms soft, your palms released. as you soften your throat, release your chest so that there's this sense of spaciousness that opens here in the middle. The chest softens, not sinking, don't push it down, but you let it go so that it falls naturally with gravity. And at the same time, the space in the throat opens as your head releases upward. Remember that you're not releasing your head by trying to stretch your throat, but the whole neck lengthens. And as the collarbones sink and the space opens and your chest relaxes, find more and more space here at the base of the throat. Just in the same way that by softening your shoulder blades down your back and letting them release away from the spine so that you're not pulling your shoulder blades in toward your back, as all of that space opens, your upper spine and your neck, the cervical spine, this whole area continues to decompress even further. As you exhale, softening your belly, your lower back as best you can. Inhaling and allowing that sense of stillness to deepen. Your glutes, your hips, your thighs, all the way down to your feet, completely released. Letting go of anything that might be restricting and compressing your breath. One of the most common complaints when people practice seated posture or standing posture for that matter is because of how their bodies have gotten deformed through poor posture over a lifetime. We feel strange as we try to ask it to be upright. And one of the most common things that happens, for instance, is we collapse our shoulders and our head forward. And this becomes new. And the only way to support this is to lean back, to arch our back, to sort of collapse into ourselves in a way that I actually can't even do. And so then when we try to align ourselves in a way that would allow our spine to feel upright, it feels as though we are falling forward. And of course, we are somewhat, because our body has adjusted to this strange collapsed position. And so part of the practice actually becomes allowing ourselves to rest in this state of discomfort, of feeling strange. Not discomfort in the sense of it's okay if it hurts, but rather what has become normal and accepted and comfortable for our system is an extremely unnatural posture most of the time. And so we try to set up the positioning to allow our body to be aligned as best we can. And then we simply wait in that state, which is in part what makes standing posture practice so powerful. We simply hang out in that place and we wait for our body to change in the same way that it changed into the odd posture, the deformed position. Not to use that word in an unkind way, but we become deformed. We're no longer upright, if that's how we started. Our bodies slowly shift into these strange tech neck positions and oddly locked out and frozen structures in our body. And the more decades that go by, the further and further along this process goes. And the way out of it is not to try to force a change. You can't, from there, move into good posture. You can't have good posture from there. My instructor always says, you can't get there from there. All you can do is set up the conditions to slowly allow things to change and be consistent enough with your practice to allow things to change the natural way, because you can't force it the unnatural way. The body won't learn that way. It just takes time. It's that way with everything. With emotional shifting, it takes that way. With weight loss, it's like that with everything. And so we have to create the right conditions and then just soak in those conditions, those proper causes and conditions, to get the effect that we want. You can't fake it and jump to the effect. That never works. You have to create the change. And so oftentimes as we sit like this, or stand if you're standing, if you're using these proper postural relationships, the places that are out of that relationship will feel strange. And that's good. You want the body to go, what is wrong here? Maybe I should adjust that. And then let it change. Soften and get out of the way as best you can. But do recognize that the further out of balance you are, the longer and the more effort it will take to get back into balance. And if you rush it, then all you do is get in your own way. So, general advice. So, before we begin, I would like to, as usual, welcome the people who are joining us perhaps for the first time from across the internet. And I'd like to direct you down below to a link that will take you to a class designed for teaching beginners how to do this practice. And I think that that will be easier than trying to follow along with these live practices if you don't know what the heck we're doing. And for everybody else, get your hands nice and warm. Keep your shoulders soft, your neck released. Continuing to breathe easily and freely. Waking up the crown of the head. Again, just a reminder for my Taiji and Qigong practitioner friends, as you lift your elbow, let your shoulders sink down the back. Don't lift it up toward the ear. So this ends up being a practice for softening the shoulder rather than tightening it. hands warm and alive. If you're noticing your hands are cold, then go soak them in hot water or something before continuing on. You want that warmth to find its way into your body. And you can use that warmth to help guide your awareness beneath the surface of your skin. If you follow that feeling of heat in, it's easier to notice the structures beneath the skin where we're becoming aware. Large intestine 20. Really useful if you've been congested. You can spend extra time here. Taking the time to release the whole side of the forehead here, this corner, the temples, beside the eyes, tops of the cheeks. Allow all of this to spread as you soften this point. And then similarly, within these points here, as you soften your jaw to make room there, allow this to help release all of the tissue in this area, not just this one point. Similarly, as you release the corner of the jaw itself doesn't just release like a hinge, but it releases forward. The jaw also hangs down a little bit as it softens. So all of this, as you're easing open this point at the corner of the jaw, and then as you warm just in front of the ear and move the chi, also make sure that you have one finger warming and releasing the ear hook, that space where the ear meets the skull. slow and comfortable and easy. Softening your hands. And then softening your hands more. One of the great benefits of this set is this very soft hand quality. Continually returning and returning to the present moment. Part of that practice, remember, is getting better and better at how we return. Return by simply softening around the distraction, the random thinking, the imagination, the big sudden burst of emotion. Don't pretend like it's not there. Don't push it away, but also don't chase it, or at least notice when you start chasing it. And then simply notice that you can lose interest, that you're more interested in what's happening here. Get better and better at being soft with your return, being friendly, kind to yourself. Part of what we're healing with this set is the practice of being friendly and kind, compassionate and understanding to our distractions and our bodies. Being accepting of how we are. And then returning. Being especially gentle if you work on this heart channel line. Softening your hands, softening your mind, gently aware. Don't develop that white knuckle grip on concentration. We relax the mind into the present moment, not tighten it. And if you are one of those people that does have difficulty feeling your own body, remember that in the very least you can focus on what you're feeling with your hands. Even if you're having trouble feeling, for instance, the experience from the arm's perspective, like what it feels like in the arm, then in the very least you can feel what your hand is doing. And then if you are able to feel the sensation of the skin from, in this case, it would be the point called lung 5. Even if you can't feel beneath the skin into that fascial layer that we're working on, in the very least, notice the movement of the skin. You may also find that there are certain places that you feel much more easily than others. And if that's the case, then you might actually find, surprisingly enough, that you want to spend more time on the places that you feel easily, because that's where you might develop your skill of feeling deeply into the body. Start with the low-hanging fruit, the easy things. You don't have to go to the most difficult thing right away. So if there are some practices that are easier for you, then you do those first. Recognizing that the things that are especially difficult will be places that you will end up spending most of your energy, most of your practice time. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with healing the easier things first. Before moving on to the others. You don't want the easy things to replace the difficult spaces. You don't want to stop working on the places in your body that you can't feel. But there's nothing wrong with cultivating the ability to feel in the places that are easier. If you're trying to change your diet, people tend to be extreme and they try to change their entire diet all at once. They usually go to some extreme diet. Instead, if you want it to last and to actually make a change in the way that you eat, sometimes it's better to simply add one thing that you do like and that you know will be good for you. And then that naturally will start to take the place of something else. You don't have to try to get rid of the thing that you hate. You can add one thing that you like that's good for you. And then do that until it's permanent. And then do it again. And there's only so many of those changes that you can make until you have completely transformed the way you eat. And you never had to try to push your head up against a brick wall. Just be gentle and easy. Be friendly. It's okay. We do want to make change, but it doesn't have to be the most painful experience we ever had. Always settling, taking the time. Spend as much time as you need until some sense of calm and release is able to happen in your system. Maybe your breath deepens for a moment. Your mind gets slightly quieter. Keeping your shoulders soft, your hands very soft. Remember that if you are somebody that has more breast tissue than I do, and there is a breast massage that your doctors have recommended, I do recommend adding that now. Allowing the warmth of your awareness to soak in. And if you're not able to feel more deeply than the surface of your skin, at the very least, have your hands warm enough so that the warmth from your palms does soak in. Continuing to free your breath, to free your torso, your solar plexus, your belly. Kindness, gentleness, friendliness. If you have difficulty feeling these things and expressing these experiences toward yourself, you might find it a little easier here just to soften your hands and be a little gentle to your body. Loving touch is tremendously healing. We want to practice it from both sides, being loving and gentle and receiving that. Practicing this unconditional acceptance and friendliness toward ourselves, especially if you tend to have strong feelings about how your body functions or how it looks, and you're often embedding these negative feelings into your body. That's a poison that we can provide an antidote to by being soft and quiet and just gently friendly. You can start to unravel that pattern a little bit at a time. emphasizing these sinking down and consolidating parts of the circle. Down, settling. As your elbows lift, let your shoulders sink as best you're able to. If your shoulders are frozen in that way, then there's some wonderful Qigong I can recommend. Cultivating some sense of feeling, some awareness at that space, at least in the navel, if you can, behind the navel, or in that middle dantian space. The more often we return and consolidate and store before coming back out, the better. Softening your abdomen and disinhibiting your breath as best you can. Softening your hands, being gentle, friendly. And then allow this quiet awareness to travel around, following the movement, feeling that space just beneath the surface of the skin. This empty, warm layer. let yourself create the space to settle into kind of deep stillness, as close as you are able to get. And if I may recommend that stillness is the root, the foundation of all Daoist practice, this ability not to hold yourself still, but to let all of the random movement and noise come to a soft, settling stop, or at least a little bit less of it. And if you find that to be an idea that's impossible, then that is definitely an especially important area to cultivate. Because it's not just an optional superpower, it's the basis of human flourishing from this perspective. All of this rubbing on my cotton pants is slowly tearing them apart. So as we slide our hands around the belt vessel, notice that what people usually will want to do with their shoulder is this. The shoulder will rock forward if that's their tendency, or they'll pull their shoulder back if that's their tendency. They might try to round forward somehow, or lean back to get their hands back, or do some sort of twisting thing. Just keep all of this as soft as you can, so that you'll notice my shoulder just settles and reaches, and my palm touches. And if you're not that flexible, it's perfectly okay to adjust. You can use the backs of your hands, but you don't want to adjust in a way that distorts your posture. Keep this weight resting here. Soften the waist, because this belt vessel and all of this is what we're trying to open. And if you collapse or compress in a certain way, then none of this will be able to soften. The movement itself will be making things worse instead of better. And so please make certain that you're moving in the direction of feeling better rather than worse. So the hands sliding up and down, softening the bladder channel, either side of the spine. And since we're in the home stretch here, as we finish our 100 days, I'm increasing the number of movements like this up to 100. But of course, I can't do that with all of them, or the form would take 2.5 hours. So if there are areas in particular that you need to focus on, then maybe spend extra time there and less time in the areas that I'm focusing on. It's okay to make your choices about that. And letting your hands settle onto your back, softening. Easing that space open. Always giving your arms a break when they need it. You don't want tension to accumulate. Shake out as many times as you need to, or just wait and soften. And then at the same level of the navel, all the way from side to side, with the emphasis on spreading open around the spine, because things tend to compress and close there. So we're helping to open it all up. So this warms up the Mingmen, up the spine, and then we do the same thing to the tailbone, the other end of the spine, or lower on the spine at least. All the way down so that your fingers touch the tip of your tailbone, depending on the chair that you're sitting on. And best to do it on your skin to allow that warmth to soak in. If you're able to, feeling that space between the skin and the tailbone. Then softening the top of the glute. And the sides of the glutes. Usually measure it as 1/3 of the distance from this bone toward the tailbone, toward the tip of the tailbone, back in that direction. But a lot of people, if you were to poke around in here, they would know, ooh, yeah, that's the sore spot, the tight spot for me. And emphasize letting your awareness soak into that area. You don't need to press in deep. We're simply helping to relieve that layer of the fascia, that membrane, warming the channels at this area. That will stimulate the point on its own. And remember, our goal is not to try to stimulate these points really hard. Our job is to soften our hands, soften our body, quiet our mind, cultivate friendliness, to release this thin layer. So just the weight of your hands. If you go too deep, you just move right past this fascial layer. Just above the knee, on the outside of the kneecap, stomach 34. Warming, releasing. Maintaining this good, loose, upright posture, no slouching, rolling, collapsing. If you need to change your posture to start reaching lower in your body more effortlessly, then that's okay. But do your best to avoid folding yourself up or crimping and compressing and stopping blood flow. Same thing on the inside of the knee, just on the inside line of the kneecap, but also, if you like, down on the face of the inside of the knee, just to make it easier to see. So with the palms, I'm emphasizing this point here, spleen 10. And with my fingertips, I simply help warm and release this lower area. But most of my awareness and my emphasis is up above. And you can certainly pause and do them both separately if you like. that space behind the knee. Maybe my favorite point overall for treating low back pain is this point. Simply folding like that drinking bird from yesterday. Keep your spine lengthened. Shoulders soft. Upper back released. Waist soft. Notice if you're tending to hold your breath or to grip in any way. And simply let everything go. Gallbladder 34. I'm doing spleen 9 on the inside at the same time. The warmth of your hands soaking in, your hands getting softer and softer with each circle. If your hands are getting pretty soft by this point in the practice, you can start to allow that movement to free up the elbows and the forearms. Notice if you're gripping there and start to let that go. And eventually you would do the same thing leading to the shoulders so that all of this is just effortlessly soft. And eventually, of course, through the whole body. As the movement travels through the body, and you may even notice that as I circle, I don't know if you can see this movement here, as the Danxian turns. The whole body eventually gets soft enough to move and take part in the circles. For me, it's still a process of learning to connect every little movement to my rotational dantian, but with ZhiCheng Shifu, I've seen him do even the smallest things, and his belly turns and is guiding every movement that he does, even when he's playing an instrument. It's pretty wild. And it's not because he's adding something, he's just so soft that every movement goes all the way through his body without running into any tension along the way. Because it's only tension that causes us to compartmentalize and break our body up. So keep that softness of your hands as you sink your thumbs into the center of your calf. And this is UB 57. The one behind the knee is UB 40. Easy and soft. And spleen 6. One hand's breadth above the anterior ankle here, the medial malleolus, just on the border of the bone and the soft spot. Warming that up. You can press your finger in there if that helps you connect with it more easily, or use the base of your thumb. And this spleen 6 point is particularly good for people who menstruate, but it is really amazing for everybody. It's very worthwhile to keep it warm and soft. This liver 3 point here, liver 2, kidney 1 on the bottom, spleen points across the top, warming with your whole hand. I also like to hold gallbladder 41 down here with my left hand. But you do want to make sure, again, that you're still resting here. Your spine is still soft and long as best you can. Don't start destroying and adding tension to the parts of your body that we've worked for the last hour and a half to soften. Softening the center of the calf, softening your hands, softening your awareness. Notice if your mind is spinning off. And simply lose interest. Cultivate the practice of being interested in what's happening more than what your mind is talking about. soft, friendly mindset. Being kind. If you were working on the leg of somebody that you loved more than anybody else ever in the world, if you can think of a person or if you just imagine a person, and they were very delicate, and you were trying to help them feel better, and you touched their feet, how would you touch their feet? You probably wouldn't grip them and move them around and be hasty and frustrated. You'd probably be really attentive and present to how they're feeling. Tender, nurturing, kind. If you can't imagine feeling that way toward yourself, maybe you can imagine what it would be like if you felt that way towards somebody else and how you would be. And try to channel that experience. The more friendly and kind you can cultivate the ability to being, the easier then it becomes the next time you do it. You're just creating those pathways. I would say very good pathways to create. Remember that you can sit on anything, a pillow, a stool. I'm putting this down to remind people to sit on something because I heard that people were copying me when I was sitting on the ground. You want to be easy and comfortable, keeping your back and your hips released, folding, but don't grip your thighs. And only go down as far as needed. If that's to your knees, and that's as far as you can before you start tightening up, then that's it. That's as far as you go. Don't fake it. There's no award for touching your toes. Just be friendly. Notice what your body is doing today, because every day it will be different. And then see what happens. Letting go and letting go and letting go. Leading with the movement of your hands rather than the movement of your elbows or your shoulders. If I lead with my shoulders, we sort of get backed up. If I lead with my elbows, the same thing. But if I lead with my fingertips pull me down and pull me down. It's easy to continuously lengthen the arms. Crown of the head as well continues upward, rather than leading with the chest, for instance. Letting that movement reach all the way up to where you're sitting, so that this part of you is also opening and closing a bit. Using your toes, engaging your ankles and your lower legs. Falling. Continue just releasing and releasing, and find where that takes you. Don't decide where you're going to land before you find out. The lengthening is the point. The letting go is the point, not how far you grip. I've just been hearing that this is very uncomfortable because people push themselves too hard. Stay in the realm of comfort. Softening your waist. Keeping your breath easy and comfortable. You're not trying to force your breath or to breathe. You're simply letting go of anything that's restricting your breath. Be gentle. When you swallow your saliva, see if you can follow the path of its movement down as though it settles in that space between the navel and the spine. And then, once you have a sense of that settling as best you can, feel free to lie flat on your back. Just for a couple of minutes lying down, if you feel like it. Letting your body open and soften. Using whatever cushions or supports you need to feel soft and released. It can be useful before you start practicing to have a few of those cushions and bolsters and supports or blankets around before you begin. Feel free to lay still as long as you like until your body feels a bit open, more easy, settled in this very particular way. And then, if you feel like it, rolling onto your side and placing yourself back into a seated position. But there is no rush. Allowing your awareness to gently spread out through the rest of your body. Especially along that layer that we've been working on with this particular form. The more we practice with it, the easier it should get to simply let your awareness tune into that in the way that you might tune into sensation on the surface of your skin. Now you can feel that wrapping, warm, alive layer beneath the skin with practice. And then your awareness spreads out into the room around you you very much. If there's any questions, we have a Melanie who walked in, joined us just so she could gatekeep and say, no questions for you.
Hey, everybody. Hey, Chris. Hey, Mags.
Our motley crew.
Yeah. Chris says UB40 were an 80s reggae band.
That's what it sounds like. I think it's so funny.
That's really funny. Did you see his question about stomach 40?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a little too in the weeds about acupuncture for this particular video. Any other questions that I can answer? Do you have any questions?
How are you looking so good?
Thanks.
Look at those socks.
Pretty amazing, huh? People who donate on Patreon, now they know where their donations go. We buy trees and tables and sock piles. That's right. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Enjoy your practice.